and then the browser is going to come up. We're all good? Oh, we are good. Okay. I'm going to give us a couple minutes. Welcome everyone that's coming on to enjoy this wonderful chat that I'm going to have with my good friend, Dr. Belisa Franich. Welcome, Dr. Belisa.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super psyched to be here, Teresa.
Me too. And you know, it's funny. So over the course of the year, I've been doing all these web classes. Breath has come up to be the continuous, it's been probably one of the most popular topics. It's come up over and over again with the group that we get to work with, whether it's the clientele on our platform or the HR directors of benefits consultants. It's like, I mean, people are now realizing that the breath is the connector between the mind and body. And so to have you on to present this is an honor.
Well, this is the topic I know, and it's the topic I love and that I'm passionate about. So as long as you don't stray and ask me about pop culture or cooking, we're fine.
Great. Okay, good. Well, I don't know anything about that either. I don't know what the most popular kitten video is out there either at the moment.
That I can tell you.
Okay. Well, okay. So what I want to do before we even start this whole thing off, because we have some really fun and engaging content today with Dr. Belisa, is I want to share with you all a little bit about what's going on in the life of the Larson household and Movement RX. And it's kind of funny here, actually, because I am in Arizona. I live in San Diego. And Dr. Belisa has been traveling around the country during COVID, and she is now in Coronado, which is like 15 minutes from me. So I'm usually in San Diego, but now I'm not. And it's go figure this presentation, we're in different states. And the reason why we're in different states is because my family and I have been on an RV trip for the last 2 weeks. And by family, you all know that I have a 3-month-old, Axel Charles, and a 3-year-old, Magnus Joseph, and my husband. And we've been in this tiny RV for the last 2 weeks. And so rooming together has been quite the thing. Axel doesn't really like the road trip, so we have to get out constantly. So if a 100-mile road trip ride ends up being like an all-day adventure. So we have had quite the challenges along the way, but it's been ultimately a super great connection for us as a family. And despite all of the challenges, having children and being in this like small space together, it's the safest way to travel for us as a family, but it's also provided us, you know, kind of getting back to enjoying the small things in life, like the sticks and the rocks. And the bedtime routine is a little bit different, and the brushing the teeth has become more of an adventure, and cooking food has become more an adventure. The first night we had cold beef stew because I couldn't figure out the stove. So we're having a good time. We're ready to get back home though. The second quick thing I wanted to talk about is get out and vote, please. This is really important. It's our right. We need to get out and vote. Our families' lives depend on it. And now, without further ado, Dr. Belisa Franich, how I met you. This is how I like to start off all of my presentations, because I think it's fun to actually share how we met. And so one, I got to see Dr. Belisa and her work on the social medias, which is a great way to see what she does and how she educates, but it is only a small glimpse of who she is. And if anyone's watched The Social Dilemma or is in any way introspective, you know that social media only gives you a small glimpse. Knowing this woman has been amazing. And I've actually only met her 6 months ago through a really good friend of mine, Sharon Moskowitz, who's an adaptive coach, Paralympian coach. She was like, I don't know why you haven't met Dr. Belisa. You have to meet her. She connected us, and boom, the sisterhood started. And while I got to learn about Dr. Belisa, she is a licensed psychologist. She's the founder of the Breathing Class. She wrote an amazing book recently called Breathing for Warriors, which she has 5 free audiobooks she's going to be able to give out to people that are on today, which is super exciting. But she also is just like, she has the same birthday as me. So I found out, which is also equally crazy. Yeah. And loves kombucha. but she is just one of the most authentic women I've met. And it's hard, I think at this, my age, I feel like it's hard to make friends easily. Like it's, and she was someone I instantly was like, yep, I want to be your friend. I want to be your friend. I want to know you. And she also very much helped me going through my labor and delivery of my second son, Axel. I have to admit, I was very scared going through my second labor and delivery because of my first experience. But with Magnus, which was 3 days long, this one ended up being like 5 hours, fast and furious labor. But the breathing she taught me, and the things that she taught me were invaluable to delivering a healthy baby. So that was super exciting. And what I'm very excited about for you all today is you're not going to learn how to deliver a baby today. And by the way, she is also world renowned. So if you go look up her bio, you're just going to be like blown away by her. But with the, the thing today is, and having worked with Movement RX, for those of you that are on or want to, is we're all about assessment, right? We want to know where you're going, you have to know where you're at. And while I love the concept of just breathe it out and breathe deeper and, use breathing as a tool, like how do we know if we're breathing effectively? And so that is what we're going to be discussing today with Dr. Belisa. She is going to share with us her tool that she created herself called the Breath IQ. So without further ado, Dr. Belisa, I would like to know, one, why did you get into just teaching about the breath, especially as a licensed clinician? Why did you start just teaching about the breath?
So, it sounds funny to have gone from a psychologist to a breathing coach or a breath worker. There still isn't a term I really like because I'm not a respiratory therapist, but what I'm doing is I'm combining biomechanics of breathing with psychology, and that's how I teach. But I came from a space where I was a child psychologist, and specifically I looked at psychometrics, so IQ testing. When I first started learning about the mechanics of breathing, both in my yoga class, but also martial arts and different sports science, is that I wanted to be able to see breathing in a way, the same way I was looking at IQ testing. So I was in psychometrics, I wanted to look at biometrics. So the switch over was actually pretty smooth going from one to the other. And what I found is that a lot of people think they're taking a deep breath, and everyone says it's important. However, we didn't have a good screening tool for it. So you can go to a hospital and get a diaphragm ultrasound, but what about just a screening tool for breathing as a movement so that we can get a baseline? Because you can't change what you can't measure. So that's where I came from.
Right. I like that concept a lot. You can't change what you can't measure. And you are in good company here I'm a PT and I don't do typical PT work. And I'm constantly having to educate people on, what I'm doing. We have a one-to-many model. We're teaching people how to move and connect with their body. And so what you're doing is you're taking the clinical practice that you've done for so many years and now giving people teaching them the fundamental tool of how to connect brain and body. And I think that's extremely powerful. And you can't change what you can't measure. I love that. I actually really like that line a lot. I might take that from you. And
it's not mine.
I'm going to tag Dr. Belisa, hashtag, you can't change what you can't measure. I always say, I remember in the Marine Corps, like, where am I on this map? And then I have to figure it out. And the assessment is figuring out where you are so you know where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't make that up. Again, I've actually looked it up to try to find out who it came from because it's such a brilliant concept, but it's not me. I'll look it up for you though, because we should reference whoever it was. It's so good.
Right. Well, you make it sound really cool. And I know that your work, you're making it happen. So you're helping people in their lives. And so that's the thing, you work with, who do you get to work with? You work with the New York City firefighters, you work with tactical units.
Yes.
Who else do you get to work with?
So it's it's pretty much any groups or private patients. So when I first started, I assumed it was going to be sort of the yoga community that was interested in breath. And I was completely wrong. The first folks that hired me were actually military, law enforcement, then more first responders of different types, fire departments. And then it sort of spread out more to combat athletes, tactical athletes, and then it's gone on to spread around to pretty much anything from anxious children to breathless seniors.
I love it. So you've worked with the spectrum.
Yes. Yes.
And that's across the spectrum of individuals.
Yes.
And it's another thing that I really appreciate about connecting with you is it's the same. I feel like it's very important as a health professional to be able to work with individuals across the spectrum, right? It's nice to have a niche. And I think in time you find your people, your niche. Like I love working with fellow service members. I love working with the average Joe in America, actually, because the average Joe in America is family of mine, right? It's people who just need to learn how to connect with their body to create wellness. And I find that, my jokes are more appropriate for the military individual. But you understand that. But it's fun to see a career in all of the individuals that you've been able to help over time, from the child to the military. Yeah.
Really. I'll get someone who's come in and they don't know why they can't breathe. And the pulmonary clinics they've been to often can't give them answers. So for me, it's a challenge. It really, it excites me to get somebody who's come in and they're frustrated, they're upset, they're really distraught about the fact that they keep looking for answers. And especially now with COVID, post-COVID, we're seeing so many breathing problems that your typical hospitals can't address. And that to me, being able to help people thrills me, and being able to figure it out, what the problem is also just, fantastic.
Yeah, well, you're very good at it. So what I want to get into now, and I want to honor everyone's time. So we want to dive into this breath IQ, right?
Great.
You can't change what you can't measure.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
You can't change
what you can't measure. I think you can. Yeah. You can't change what you can't measure. That's how I say it. But like I said, the concept, people have said it in different ways. Yeah. But it's pretty much, I always think of it, because I love the gym and I love science, is that if you don't have a baseline, you can be talking about breathing, but in general, we have this caricature of taking a deep breath. And, it's not our fault, because when we look around, our superheroes are breathing with this caricature. And when I say caricature, what I mean is that we're using auxiliary muscles. So we're actually not breathing in a way that's biomechanically sound anymore. It's really, it's what I say, anatomically incongruous. And I usually don't, speak with words with that many syllables, because you don't have to.
I love it.
But it's just a breath that does not make sense given the way we were engineered, given the way we were designed. We're breathing in a way that just makes absolutely no sense. So I actually want you to try this now, and then I'll talk about the BIC. Is that most people right now, I want everybody to try this right now, is take a deep breath and really fill up, and then exhale, let it go. And try that again. Big inhale, fill all the way up, and exhale, let it go. And here's the first thing that happens, and you're going to look at Teresa. People close their eyes. And I say, why are your eyes closed? Because we're used to breathing being this meditative thing. And I'm looking at it like a movement. So you don't have to get your eyes closed. In fact, I want you to open them. And what I want you to take a look at is, I want you to see, when I said take a deep breath, did you breathe up? So this is called apical. I call it vertical just because it's a word that makes more sense to people. So most of us inhale and we go upward, our shoulders kind of pull upward and we get taller. And I'm doing air quotes with taller. And that actually is a breath that does not make sense. We were not designed to breathe this way. And if you look at any animal on the planet, it's not breathing with its shoulders, even the ones that are standing upright. So take a look at your average kangaroo. They are not breathing with their shoulders.
Go to New Zealand.
Animal, right? Go to
New Zealand.
So that's what the breathing IQ looks at. And you can do this, you can get a sense of it now with me. You can go, if you have a measuring tape on hand, if you want to send somebody to scurry out and bring you a measuring tape. But the breathing IQ looks at thoracic excursion. So it looks at chest wall expansion. And that's something that has been done in the past. However, what's new for the breathing IQ is that we're looking at location of motion and range of motion. So the first thing we're looking at is, do you breathe vertically? Now, if you're not breathing vertically, your shoulders aren't moving and just your middle is moving, you're a horizontal breather, a diaphragmatic breather. And if you're sort of between the two, well, you're a hybrid. So first we look at the style of breathing, and then we look at the range of motion. And I'm holding my measuring tape here. The hard ones will do in a pinch, but the soft ones are better. And what you're going to do is take it, put it around your middle at the bottom of your ribs. So if you go from your nipples straight down to the bottom of your ribs, put the measuring tape around you. There you go.
Okay.
All the way around, and make sure it doesn't droop in the back. And I want it snug. So most people let it get all droopy. I actually want it snug on your body. You're going to inhale, look at that number, then exhale, look at that number. For some people, the inhale is bigger than the exhale. For some people, the opposite. The exhale is bigger than the inhale. And you're going to take the location of movement and the range of movement, and you're going to get your grade that way. So I'll go ahead and skip ahead. I'm going to give you the link to where to go to actually get that number if you like the numbers. But the way you want to be breathing is without your shoulders moving, because those are auxiliary muscles. You want to be using your main muscles, which are your diaphragm. It's just in the middle of your body. And on the inhale, you actually want to expand. And on the exhale, you want to narrow. And I know that sounds super basic, like, well, of course you do. However, when you actually start measuring yourself and looking at other people, you wouldn't believe how many people are not doing that. When they're breathing, they're actually pulling their thoracic cavity up with their neck and shoulder muscles. And they're actually not expanding using their diaphragm. And sometimes they're not even narrowing well. So what you want is that horizontal breath, inhale, expand, exhale, narrow. And even if you have that right, you probably aren't expanding as much as you should. And your exhale probably isn't as good as it should be, but we can get you there.
What's, so the position, and we'll put a link to the breath IQ in the show notes here. But what's a good number, would you say? Does it depend on each person? Or
yes, yes and no. I'm going to give you the general, is that if you look at yourself breathing, and you might even take right now your computer cord or anything like that and put it around your middle and take a breath without moving your shoulders. So it's almost like you're holding two kettlebells at your sides. You can't move, you should not move your shoulders. Inhale and try to get a bigger breath, and then exhale, try to narrow. If you are lanky, there should probably be, if you're lanky, so that number's in the 20s, you should have 2 inches more. There should be 2 inches between your inhale and your exhale. If you're in the 30s, there should be 3 inches between your inhale and your exhale, 40s, 50s, etc. So that's what you're looking for.
Got it. So age-wise, is that why you said no?
Yeah, age is actually, what's interesting about age and breathing is that your breathing functions actually start to decline at age 29. And if you don't—
Hold on 1 second, I just lost you.
Yeah, no worries.
But hold on, everyone.
Oh no, can't hear you now.
Okay, now how's that?
Oh, that's perfect.
Okay.
Good recovery. Yeah.
Wow, I figured out this tech thing. Okay, everyone, let's continue on.
Okay. So when it comes to age, your breathing function starts to decline at age 29, which for most people is a big surprise because they figure, oh, maybe 40s, 50s, 60s, but it's actually at, before you're 30. And that's the reason we start getting winded, or things start feeling harder in our 30s and certainly in our 40s. Now, given the amount of respiratory problems we have in the world, whether that is forest fires or pollution or respiratory problems or COVID, COPD, we really need to start paying attention to respiratory health. I always say we have to start paying attention to respiratory health the same way we did to cardiovascular health, or else we're going to be in a big mess.
Well, I think because of the pandemic and the kind of the focus on respiratory rate now as being a biomarker that people are tracking, you can use it with the Whoop It Up, or some people's beds even track respiratory rate, or the Oura Ring. I think people are becoming more attentive to it. They don't know much about it, right? Which is why a wearable can be, exciting, because people can now track it, even though they don't know what to do with that information. I think knowing that it is a pretty stable biomarker is nice to know. And then if it jumps up, it indicates something's going on.
Sure.
What I think I actually did a presentation on that, and I think it's fascinating too, to like have specific HRV, can track HRV, track respiratory rate, and have it be more of a leading indicator that, versus having your blood work done or waiting till you're actually sick to get checked. Like, you can actually track these things every day. So after learning about the breath IQ and kind of knowing where you're at now in terms of excursion and learning, not breathing vertically, eliminating breathing vertically and more breathing out, would you say horizontally, is going to be more effective for you. But have you been able to tie, because in the world of wellness, and most people on here are in the wellness industry, and wellness is, before COVID, has been like drinking kombucha and organic meals and doing yoga. I don't know why I'm using that voice, but it's, you can't throw a mental health problem. You can't throw yoga to a mental health problem, right? Like, so why, but breath work always comes up when we talk about mental health.
Yes.
And so have you been able to tie in the improved breath pattern, biomechanics of breath, to someone's psychology?
Ooh, so I'll backtrack a little bit. There is really good sound research on breathing rate and anxiety disorders. So there's a fantastic Dr. Robert Freed, and his book is on my teacher training required reading list. Dr. Eric Pepper in San Francisco does some really brilliant work as well. So we know that a fast rate and anxiety are things that you see together. Now, with rate, I want to just sort of do a side note, is that I don't tell people who have a fast breathing rate to slow their rate down. Because if they're breathing vertically, which is a small breath, if I tell them to slow down, then they just get more uncomfortable, because it was a smaller breath just by the fact that you have less dense oxygen-rich lung tissue on the top of your body. So telling someone who's breathing quickly to slow down is a tough sell. If you start breathing horizontally, you will automatically start breathing more slowly, because it's a better breath. It's a more efficient breath. You have denser lung tissue. You have more oxygen exchange in the lower part of your body where your diaphragm is. And that's the whole point, is that we were beautifully designed if we would just breathe the way we were designed. The diaphragm is right here. It's what we measured. And right above it is the best part of your lungs, all the way around your body.
Right. Got it. Okay. That's a really good piece of information there. I think for all listening, it's, instead of, and even for me as a health professional, I like helping people slow down their respiratory rate, especially if they're, only, we call it in the posture restoration world that I've done a lot of training in, basically just chest, like upper lung breathing.
Yeah.
Like, if people can start to breathe lower, teaching them how to breathe lower and breathe more horizontally will automatically help them decrease their breath. So instead of focusing on like the count of breaths, the effectiveness of how they breathe is better. Okay.
Yes.
I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
And how, you know, it depend on the person, but I've taught a lot about parasympathetic activity, like how, you know, we're constantly stimulated in our environment. Like now that the work to personal life is blended because people are working from home, I mean, there's more anxiety, depression rates have escalated. And so getting people to, are helping people to learn that this breath, this effectiveness of breathing horizontally can be a great transition, a great balance to their day, can help them balance triggers, is something that I think super effective. Oh, there's my little one, 3-year-old, right? But how many breaths, because this is kind of interesting to me in terms of science. So because of all this stimulus, right, and people's anxieties have escalated, depression has escalated, the breath count, like what is an effective, for someone to be able to tap into that parasympathetic state?
Sure.
What is it the horizontal breathing in conjunction with the breath rate, or what is it?
Exactly. So, I mean, there's 4 ways to get more vagal tone. So to be able to access a parasympathetic state more quickly. And it's a diaphragmatic breath. So it's a deeper breath, which is automatically going to be slower. You can hum on the exhale if you want to. That gets you more into a parasympathetic state.
Hum on exhale.
Or you can put your hands and face in cold water. But with which you usually don't have access to, but you do with your breath. So if you have an A on your breathing IQ, then look at the rate. So I give people steps. Is that first make sure the mechanics are good, and then go and try to get to, it's between 5 and 6 breaths a minute. It's doctors Richard Brown and Patricia Garbarg out of Columbia who have done a lot of research on the perfect rate. So the best heart rate variability and the rate of breathing. But again, what we've been missing till now is the teaching and the cues of the mechanics first, then the pace of the breath. But you'll find that most people, even if they're coming in and they're breathing, 15 or 20 times a minute, is that once you change the mechanics, they actually get much more slow in the way they're breathing, because they can. So now if you cue them to breathe slower, they can. And again, that 5 to 6 has been found to have the best heart rate variability.
6. Okay, got it. Thank you. That's really helpful, because I kind of tend to focus on the number, as much as I can, especially when I only get to work with a lot of people from virtually right now. Using the breath IQ will be super helpful in being able to get a number from them, right? And actually help them identify, right, if they are truly effectively breathing. Because people can, I think oftentimes and you know this in movement, like their perspective of what's going on isn't actually what's going on. Exactly. And I would like to make a political comment about last night's debate, but I won't. This isn't a political commentary. But like people's perspective of what's actually going on oftentimes isn't. I think they have a great squat, but they don't have a great squat and their knees still hurt, right? They think they're breathing great. I'm one to say, yes, I think I'm breathing great, but it could be better. My mechanics could be better. And if I improve my mechanics, then I can improve my respiratory rate.
Yes.
I can decrease my anxiety. And there you go. Like I'm in a more
parasympathetic. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So very helpful there. And I would like to open up the platform now. We're about ending our webinar time, but I want to stay on for another 10 minutes. People have questions.
Yeah, I love the questions. Please, yes.
And I also would like to know, Dr. Belisa, is where people can best find out about your work.
Sure, but the website is The Breathing Class, and I think that's a Facebook page as well. Instagram is Dr. Belisa. So pretty much either Dr. Belisa or The Breathing Class. The last book that came out, and it just came out, of course, in the middle of COVID, was Breathing for Warriors.
Yes.
And that has to do with sports. The more basic book is just called Breathe, and it has a long title that I forget, 14 Days, to Overhauling Your Physical and Mental Health. So there's 2 books out there, but you can find, there's a lot of information on my website. So the BIC is on my website. You don't have to buy the book to be able to do that. And all the basic exercises are there as well, because my goal is to teach and empower more people with their breath. So it's all there.
Awesome. And what we will do with the people that were able to be on today is we can get them a link to your audiobook.
Great.
So the people that we know, the people that signed on today, we can actually get them a copy of your audiobook. Her education is powerful, everyone. So please check it out. And if there's any questions, so feel free to put them in the chat box, which I'm going to monitor here. Make sure that you put the question into all panelists. And as I want to just everyone know, we've got a baby crying inside and then a 3-year-old wandering behind me here, like in the desert, just making sure there's no snakes out there.
Maybe the dingo took you away. I shouldn't even mention dingoes, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any Seinfeld fans out there?
So if people, in terms of practicing breath, this will be a question from me to you. In terms of practicing breath, how would you suggest the best way and best time of day to practice it?
Sure. Well, because it's about changing the way you breathe all day long, every day, is that I would take the first 14 days from today for the next 2 weeks and practice it and remind yourself as often as you can. So you used to breathe horizontally well. Until the age of 5.5. I actually did a study where I looked at 158 children to see when it changed. So what you're trying to do now isn't a practice like a yoga practice. It's more of, I love that you compared it to a squat. That's so perfect, is I don't squat well. So let me look at the mechanics and practice over and over until it becomes natural. So then my squat is perfect and I'm not going to injure myself. So the goal now is let me practice as often as possible so that my body can remember something it used to know. And the way it was designed, your diaphragm wants to flatten out and push your ribs open on the inhale. It wants to do that. And then on the exhale, your body wants to narrow. So it's all about getting your body to remember that and letting it do what it's supposed to do. So I would just start with reminding yourself over and over. And the things that help people is, and I actually work in a very interactive way, even if it's on the screen, is that I want you to put your hands on your body where the biggest part of your lungs are. So go ahead and put them down here. So best part of your lungs are all the way around here. So if you remember, best part of my lungs are down here, is that you will think I need to expand there and contract. So every time you take an apical or vertical breath, you'll think, why am I doing that? The best part of my lungs are all the way in the middle part of my body. I should be expanding on the inhale and contracting on the exhale. So reminding yourself of that is very important.
Right.
Almost before that is dismantling the brace. And we all have the brace. It's either an emotional corset or it's a physical, muscular corset. It does not matter how heavy you are or how thin you are. We're all bracing because this is a response to stress. So letting your middle go, inhaling and letting yourself expand. And then on the exhale, actually giving it an extra little squeeze and trying to narrow your body is what you should practice as often as you can.
I like those cues. I find that, especially working with, people that aren't health professionals, like it comes down to the cue. Like you and I love the numbers, and I think people really do like numbers. They like to know, like, where am I at?
Yeah.
But what to do with those numbers, right? So if you know, okay, I'm an A breather, I'm a B breather, whatever.
Yeah.
But being able to think about letting yourself go, right? I love that cue, letting yourself go, which
on the inhale,
people, on the inhale, right?
Not
like
the exhale.
People need to think about that in their life. Like, let yourself be. Like, don't hold on. So, like, you can think about it just in terms of a distinction in the mental head space. Like, don't hold on so tightly to everything.
Yes.
Let go on the inhale. And think about cinching down.
Yes.
And getting all of that air out. That's kind of what I've learned in the posture restoration work I've done, is cinching down, shrink wrapping, elongating that shrink wrapping the spine. It makes me even feel good thinking about it.
Yeah.
And what I do love about practicing breath work, and I can't say meditation has been part of my practice recently with the two little ones. It's just like, I find sleep is like, I'm going to prioritize sleep over getting up early to have some alone time. But just knowing that we take 24,000 breaths a day or something like that. There's a lot of breaths that we take. It's a huge amount, right? So those reps, like, how are we performing those reps?
Yes.
And I like to think every 20 to 30 minutes that, and this is what I teach in my wellness practice, like every 20 to 30 minutes, you're taking a breath. You're consciously thinking about the breath you're taking and the movement you're doing. So I just did a video on like pelvic floor, working on your pelvic floor as you're driving because we're driving a lot lately. But you can do that with the breath. And I've found when I work on my breath, I can be doing it when I'm driving or when I'm laying down, is that my thoracic spine, that thoracic cavity doesn't feel so stiff, which is something that when I start to get really anxious, like that's the cue for me, is like, wow, I feel a lot of tension back there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is the cue for me, that physical cue. But if I were to, and I'm, speaking to the choir here for everyone on, like, just make it part of your practice of every 20 to 30 minutes, taking a couple horizontal breaths and practicing it. Yeah. And over time, with just being conscious of it, it'll become something that you don't really have to think about as much, because you're automatically going to be breathing horizontally. And it depends on how old you are and how many poor patterns you've developed, right? And how stingy you are to change. But like, the change can happen fairly quickly, or it can take a long time. And what would you say for the average Josephine? How long would it take to change this pattern?
Recognizing what you're doing and wanting to change and seeing change comes very quickly, very quickly. It's extremely gratifying as a clinician, because most health behaviors don't. And, but you'll find that, and as you're listening as well, you'll find that knowing where your lungs are and knowing that you should be expanding and contracting, and that's actually the right way. And then actually looking at your child, your kangaroo, your dog, or whatever, and watching them breathe and saying, hey, they do expand and contract in the middle. Just knowing that helps you change. So it's a change that, at least the first part of the slope, the learning curve, is very fast.
That's good to know. I mean, I think that's a win in today's uncertain times, is that we don't know how long the pandemic will last. We don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty in our lives. There's always uncertainty, but I think for most, there's more than usual. But knowing that your breath can change quickly, and knowing that can directly impact your anxiety levels, right? If you change from a vertical breather to a horizontal breather, like just knowing that for those people that are on that, serve people, because typically the people that come on and work with us are people that are trying to impact the masses that maybe don't, quite get it yet, or are looking for answers of something that can help their people right now while they're at home. Is that knowing that going from switching to the vertical to the horizontal, like you said, Belisa, and then knowing that can shift very quickly. And we take so many breaths a day. There's so much opportunity to practice, right? And I'm thinking about even right now, as the time is coming to an end, like it causes me some anxiety. I'm like, breathe a little bit lower, like breathe more horizontally versus vertically, right? It'll help me lessen that anxiety and get through what in this transition. Like it's amazing how much during the day there's this ebb and flow of anxiety that happens for me. Even hearing the baby cry over and over, and nothing I'm doing is helping, seemingly. Like that causes anxiety, and so being able to use this practice as a way of helping create that calm for me is really beneficial. So thank you.
That you said it perfectly, and your brain may still have the rhetoric of being concerned about what's going on around you. However, your body will calm, and then you can get your brain to calm as well. So your heart rate will go down, your blood pressure will go down, your cortisol will go down, and your immune system will go up, just by changing the breath to one that's horizontal. And that's just, I don't love the word biohack because, but I will use it in this case. It is a really good biohack.
I love that, and I appreciate that. Yeah, biohack is, I agree, is a typically overused term, but it is for today's day and age, especially as much as breath has been this kind of hippy dippy, only yogis use it. Now it's creating, and again, a lot of the research and articles coming out by some of these institutions that I really respect in the wellness industry. Wellness is becoming more accessible. The breath is the core of that. Like, you want to create more wellness quickly in your life, right? It's changing your eating lifestyle is important. Changing your movement lifestyle is important, but the core of all of that is changing the way you breathe.
Yeah. The foundation. Yeah.
So that's the foundation.
The core of the core. I like
the core.
I
yes.
love the core of the core.
All right, Dr. Belisa. Well, thank you for your time today, and everyone that's been on. You will get access to, we're going to make a vlog out of this. It's on YouTube Live. So share it with anyone and anyone you think needs this information. And we will have Dr. Belisa on again, because all we do is teach about wellness. Yeah. And I'm going to see you very soon in Coronado, Dr. Belisa. Yes. So thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege,
Teresa. Thank you for having me. Really, really important topic. And I'm thrilled to have been able to be interviewed by you. You know, I love you. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Well, I'm equally thankful that you've become a friend and considered part of our family, movement family now, because one, you've helped me a lot in my, like I said, my labor and delivery. You're someone that thinks outside the box. I actually did a post on this recently of just being grateful for the other health professionals out there who think outside the box and who are vulnerable in the way they express their education. It's all too often we see the social dilemma, right? People portray these perfect lives, and yet everyone struggles. And being able to show that struggle now, just even little glimpses of it, to share with the masses that they're not alone, you know, and that, right, we can change. Like, I'm the first to admit that the breath, I used to totally downplay it, and it's been such a huge instrument in my life in changing my physiology to help change my psychology. Like, I am not a breath expert. I'm not a mental health expert, but I do know that through changing the body mechanics, my biomechanics, there's a lot of power in the way it makes me think. I think slower, I think more effectively, I think more clearly. But having other health professionals in my life who are friends who do that kind of work too is super powerful. So anyway, okay, everyone, have a wonderful day. And we will see you in 2 weeks, because in 2 weeks we have a Navy SEAL commander on who is going to be talking about mindfulness. Lisa, you would love this one. And you will meet John.
I can't wait. Yeah.
You will meet this guy. He's amazing. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Adios from Arizona and Coronado. All right, 1 second, Lisa. Yes. Okay. That was great.
It still says live online.
Hold on, everyone. I'm just going to end this and call you.